It's an absolute pleasure to be here today, representing Legal & General. For those of you that don't know, Legal & General are one of Europe's largest insurance, workplace pension and retirement income providers. We have over 1.1 trillion assets under management, which means that we can influence boardrooms around the world in the major economies. In the last 5 years, we've paid over 4 billion in claims in life insurance policies, so we can make a real difference to our customers, and that's where our founders started. So we're actually founded in 1836, about a mile in that direction, by 6 lawyers in a coffee shop. So coffee shop startups, not a new thing, been around for a couple of 100 years. And speaking of startups, you know, Tealium, I think it was 2008, the original, Dog, Ali, Mike, and then formed into something bigger. So it's amazing to see from tiny acorns, great oak trees grow. And the essence of Legal & General, much like Tealium's essence at the start, hasn't changed. You know, we are about being trusted, secure, and making smart, ethical decisions with data. So that really hasn't changed in those couple of 100 years. What has changed is technology. So technology shifts massively. Tools and technology, even in my 10 years with Legal & General, has massively, massively changed. So we've had to innovate to thrive, to survive in those 200 years. And that's the real theme of today. How are we as individuals going to embrace this new technological revolution to make sure our organizations can thrive? But data is the main character of that story. So I'd like to say, despite all of the AI hype, I'm incredibly hopeful that AI will help us drive more efficient, effective, and continue to make those smart, ethical decisions. It took 100 years to get from the Model T to the Tesla Roadster. That was an incredible amount of time, but 2 incredibly innovative propositions in the market at their times. In 1908, Legal & General had mostly paper records, algorithmic computations on, tabulations, and our records were very much in the analog space as the Model T was. By 2008, we'd mostly digitized, albeit in lots of silos and legacy systems, but we'd made huge progress. But I'd almost point out, in 2008, that was when Nokia had a 40% market share, and the iPhone was about a year old. And we all know what happened in that next decade. So change is happening faster and faster. And now, with the possibilities of AI and computation becoming almost endless, we have to think about this pace of change. What are we going to do as individuals? So I would ask you, as individuals, and if I can get the house lights up, the question I'm asking today is, what are you personally doing in your organization to embrace AI? What steps are you taking? And it would help me understand, just in the room now, by a show of hands, where am I, in the context of your organization, where are my 10 out of 10 AI ninjas? So if you can put your hands up and keep your hands up if you think you're a 10 out of 10 AI ninja. Maybe my 9s and 8s? Be confident. Brave. I'm not going to ask you any questions, by the way. So 9s and 8s. Have we got 7s and 6s? Oh, we're starting to see a smattering of hands. 7s, 6s, 5s and 4s. And I'm going to lump you all together now. 3 2s and 1s. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. That covers everyone. We've got people that shouldn't be here. So hands up, everybody. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Keep your hands up, hands up, hands up. Please, please. It's not difficult. Hands up. Everyone, please. Come on. I'm not continuing until we get all the hands up. Right. Have you got your AI strategies? Have you got your AI use cases and your AI delivery plans all in order? If you have, keep your hands up. Okay. Not surprising. So it's expected, it's normal to be confused, whether you're an AI ninja or an AI newbie. There's so much to consider, whether it's the pace of change itself, the change of technology, the new vendors that have come onto the market. You saw that video right at the start with all of the explosion of new vendors that came in just in the last few months. There's massive cost pressures to demonstrate return on investment, to demonstrate the value that AI can possibly bring. There's capability gaps in our organizations. So who are we as teams and the teams we work with, and how is, we saw there not many people volunteering as being AI ninjas. So we're all learning of what we need to do in this space. So my job as a leader, as a marketing technology director, is to empower and enable my teams to make stuff happen. So that's simple as I'd put it. I've got to remove some of those problems, I've got to open up opportunities, and I've got to try and get the organization to collaborate internally and with brilliant partners. I've got to create transparency, and I've got to try and connect and join the dots. So put simply, to get from AI hype to hope, I've got to try and understand where the value is, and I've got to identify and make decisions. Now that sounds simple, doesn't it? So what problems and opportunities could AI solve for, and how? And I'd like to focus on the how first. Some of you may recognize the Cynefin framework. This is loosely based on the Cynefin framework, and it's a Welsh word, Cynefin, and it means something in the translation of habitat or place. So Cynefin was originated by a guy called Dave Snowden from IBM, and the concept was to try and understand the context from where you're making your decisions. It's to aid the decision-making process. And really the challenge that we all have is how do we get our use cases from out of the middle in that confusion space and into one of the decision-making domains. What you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen is in clear and complicated domains, this is where things are pretty structured, things are pretty known. This is where we can apply best practice. Cause and effect are really, really closely linked, and this is a really good place for us to consider AI use cases. We can use established practice and deliver demonstrable and predictable, repeatable outcomes. On the left, this is where we see more retrospective or unknown practice, and this is where we see chaos, so chaotic and complex domains. And these domains is where we'll see more of an untrodden path or fresh snow, new things for us to develop, and things change really, really quickly in these domains. So we need to fail fast and learn and be really responsive to opportunities. It's probably where more of generative AI plays a greater role, and it's where the development of AI is probably going to take us. So there's lots of opportunity in the left-hand side in complex and chaotic. I'd like to take us through today, just through using that Cynefin framework, how we're approaching AI in legal and general. So first, in the clear domain, this is really what it says on the tin. It's about that best practice. So we heard yesterday's session talking about from collection to activation. And if I consider Tealium's really important role for us in delivering our AAA of access, analysis, and activation. So in the access space, this is about that clean, reliable, real-time data. And obviously, Tealium plays a really important role of connecting us with our data warehouses. There's bidirectional connectivity, so whether client or server side, Tealium's streaming that real-time data for us. And there's huge amounts of automation, which saves time, is more efficient, and is really good for us in terms of removing human error. Analysis, this is where we can unify our data, apply business and human-friendly classification to our data so that we can create that consistency of using that data. And consistency is king, maintaining data integrity. Automating reporting and analysis is another significant improvement we have delivered at Legal & General. This is improving our speed to insight and speed to making decisions on our data. Josh and Gareth with Snowflake will talk to us a little bit later about how we've done this with our lifetime value modeling. And finally, in activation, empowering real-time decisions and making those decisions in our customer experiences is crucial for us. And those 1,300 plus turnkey integrations that Tealium provides us to externalize our data is really important. If you can dream it, they can do it. Underwriting Assistant is another great example of this clear domain. So we can straight through process about 70% of our life applications. That's using traditional machine learning and AI, and that's about predictable, repeatable, explainable, and ethical decisions that we can demonstrate to regulators. The remaining 30% of that cylinder is quite costly. So to get to that 30% requires a lot of human intervention, or did require human intervention. So this is where manual underwriting has to happen. We would collect various formats of additional data from customers. This could include GP records, it could include test results, and that data historically needed a human to comb through and make sense of and apply our rules and logic. This is, again, really mature generative AI, so what large language models can do in terms of summarization and pulling out key data from all these disparate data sources. So this is about applying best practice, remember, in this domain, so using proven, accurate processes and delivering demonstrable outcomes. Of course, human in the loop is critical in this context. We can't just allow algorithms and machine learning to operate without that human in the loop responsive feedback. So we're using this in that context, and I think Nathan mentioned yesterday, for some of our chase processes, we're considering whether or not Moments API could give some of our operational teams, again, another way to access some of this summarized data. So moving into the second domain, this is the complicated domain. I think Gareth reminded me this morning that last year I talked about assembling the Avengers. When we talk about the complicated domain, this is about bringing experts together and really driving towards measurable, tangible outcomes. Nathan's session yesterday, he talked about some of our significant challenges in cross-domain. And when we're trying to deliver consented, contextual, and consistent experiences across this kind of complex journey, that cross-domain challenge is really real for us, and it creates a lot of problems. So breaking down each of these steps and each of these experiences that we have with our customers, it's really important that we can understand the context of that customer throughout and make those joins. It's using the Moments API to resolve some of those identity challenges has enabled us to move from sort of multi-channel, lots of different channels, to omni-channel, so joining those together. And now we've got sight of where we could even get to omni-channel, where we can create our own designed experiences and interventions that we might need to make with customers. The other thing I'd say here is quite often your silos in people, process, data and technology will be felt in customer experience. It's not perfect for us now, but we've definitely got sight for how we improve this. And it's in the complicated domain because this stuff requires a lot of different touch points, a lot of different data sources, lots of different teams, cultural challenges for us to resolve. But we are delivering now first page personalization in a number of these steps. We are able to realign a lot of the teams in terms of shared objectives and shine a lot of light in terms of how we improve these different customer experiences. So we're moving away from one-size-fits-all, very linear journeys, to something that's more conversational, to something that's more engaging, and something that's more personalized to our customers. And this is delivering higher engagement, conversion, and demonstrably better customer outcomes. In the complex domain, this is about emerging practice and how we are applying our AI and machine learning into our business to inform real-time experiences. And as we mature, we'll want to move this from that complex domain into the complicated. So we want to try and create the good practice. And frankly, this is where machine learning and AI is making money for us now. So it's not necessarily about understanding churn and retention and being able to go, great, we can predict it and we can understand it. It's what you do with that. So for us, this is about how we move from being able to predict into being more prescriptive. So it's how we apply these models, and this is why it's in this domain. So we've also implemented a lot of the conversion APIs. We're feeding these models with more and more data so they can become better. And as you would expect for me to say this, being from financial services, that past performance doesn't always guarantee future performance. So these models need to be continually retrained. They need to be remapped. We need to think about how we're applying them, and we need to continue to improve them. So in order to drive effectiveness, this isn't a once and done. This is an ongoing, sort of painting the bridge. Josh and Gareth will talk a little bit more about the LTV, so the lifetime value by segment later. And what I'd sort of call out here is for us to be able to discern by a customer segment and a micro segment, the potential value of that customer is really important. It helps us to inform the journeys that we build, and it helps us understand the cost that we can invest to potentially acquire or service those customers. So if we know what we can afford to invest, and we know how we can tailor their journey, we can drive better outcomes for the customer and for ourselves. The chaos domain. Don't stay here for as long as you need to be. That's the lesson here. This is about experiments. This is about MVPs. This is about stealth. This is about learning. This is about, frankly, not wasting lots of time and effort when something isn't going to work. So swallow your pride and move on. Here's an example of a discrete experiment that we are running with retrieval augmented generation. So in the example here, you can imagine that historically, if a customer was going to make a query to a chatbot or to a website, they may link to some sort of keyword-based repository, or it will be some sort of knowledge base. That's very predicted, and it drives great outcomes. So we can join common queries and we can give customers answers. Or it could be linked to an LLM that's trained on a very static data set. Say, for example, descriptions on how a product works. But it lacks that context. So the reason we're interested in retrieval augmented generation is because we can take that streamed data of what's happening. We can take that observed, number one. So we can look at what the customer's doing in that moment, their behavioral data. We can take the informed, the zero-party data. What are they asking? What's the question they're asking? So what are they doing? What's the question they're asking? And we can join that by looking and thinking about the context. So who is that customer? What do we know about them? And in this case, we're linking to our single customer view, which allows us to gather that context. And that's a semantic search, which is more like a mathematical representation of the keyword, of their prompt. And it joins to the most appropriate, we said just in time, the right amount of data to inject into that AI. So what we don't want to do is to train the AI on all of our customer data, and for one customer to say, I don't want you to use my data in that way, I have to throw an entire model away. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of resources. And if you think that one prompt can generate the equivalent of, or cost the equivalent of half an iPhone's charge of energy, this is expensive. This is why these credits cost money. So just in time, real-time contextual search combined with one of our proprietary in-house models allows us to create an output that is more personalized, more relevant, and removes those hallucinations that you might get from a traditional large language model. So this is complicated because there's huge amounts of potential data sources, some structured, some unstructured. There's issues potentially around privacy and consent. That's really important, as you've heard from Jeff earlier. How we manage human in the loop. So, right, I think Lloyd said yesterday, you wouldn't necessarily put this in the wild in front of customers without some sort of oversight. So how do you scale that human in the loop control? And most importantly, how do we evidence this is adding value? So we need to look at outcome, because there's a lot of cost and complexity in doing this. Is it any better than something more simple? And if it's not, why do it? Well, why do it now? So a lot to learn from that. Finally, that confusion piece in the middle of the Cynefin model. So depending on your maturity in your organization, you may have the culture, the capacity, the capability to play in all of those domains. True agility requires transparency, and we've introduced an AI accelerator in L&G to try and help us understand our AI initiatives. Now, I don't own this process, but I do advocate for it, and I am a positive, influential person in this process. And it's the classic sort of hare and tortoise, where we don't want to just run off everybody doing their own thing, all trying to get as fast as possible. We want to try and create an element of collaboration and control. So if you've got 100 units of effort to deploy on your AI initiatives, you can try and move 100 things 1 inch forward, or you can try and take 10 things and move them 10 inches, or one thing and move it 100. So picking the things that are going to add the most value. I am running out of time, so I'm going to briefly go over this one. The most important part of this is how we prioritize. So we consider the desirability, so who this is for, what the outcome is going to be, is for the customers or for colleagues. We consider feasibility. So what capacity or capability do we have in the, and culture do we have in the organization to adopt something like this? How viable it is, what the cost, what the outcome, what the predicted returns are going to be. And perhaps most importantly, how ethical. So why? Have we got clarity on why we can do this, the compliant approach, and whether we've got wider considerations around CSR, for example. So we can take hundreds or thousands of AI use cases and filter them down and create focus as an organization. And this doesn't mean that those practitioners in that number 9 there can't do their own learning and experiments, but it does mean that they are focused against a common set of objectives as a team. So we want to try and get as many people aligned to the outcomes as possible. This approach has meant that I've got 3 or 4 use cases that aren't seeing the light of day at the moment, but I have got 2 that are. So I mentioned that data is the main character of the story today, and I would encourage you all to think about the place that you're coming from to make your decisions around AI. Chaos and confusion are labeled accurately, so they can be destroying of your credibility, they can take up a lot of your cost and effort, and they can create lots of challenges for you in your organization. But you'll probably find more hype use cases there as well, so think about where you can make the biggest impact in your organization. There's a significant amount of value to be had, and as the image will show you there, when you've got a beast in your corner, there is definitely hope. I would like to finally thank my team. I'd like to thank everybody at Tealium, directly or indirectly, that has supported us on our journey and continues to. We've just come to the end of a 3-year deal. We were delighted to be able to do a new 5-year deal with them. So thank you, Tealium. And specifically, the AI that I'm really proud of is the amazing individuals, and it wouldn't be fair for me to not shout out Yaz and Kat, our account team, and my collaborating partner on this presentation, Alex. So thank you very much for those 3 individuals.